Andrew comes by and he's working with the ex-founder of Skype, I believe, who's funded him to build a unified longevity platform where he could connect into any database that has like a medical record, like Sutter Health or Kaiser or whatever. You log in with whatever login they give you, not a doctor.ai. Jonathan and I just spent the last like 5 or 6 days or something last week just going to conferences. Jonathan had a VIP pass to get into a speaker's dinner.
You're just tripping over really smart people. It was just this feeling of constant FOMO that there was just like somebody right next to you that you could have this amazing conversation with, share ideas, generate activity.
These conferences are cutting edge, the latest and greatest with the best people in these spaces.
I want to build consciousness into a user experience. That's the role in life that I want to play.
Most tools group cohorts by click. Our tool groups cohorts by belief to help your product do its job better. Why do actors make the choices they do? The von Neumann Morgenstern utility theorem, or VNM, demonstrates that rational choice under uncertainty involves making decisions that take the form of maximizing the expected value of some cardinal utility function. Jonathan, could you give the audience the lowdown of what happened at the speaker dinner?
Yeah, let's see.
Everybody, welcome to the ABCs for Building the Future podcast. We have myself, Robert, and my co-host Jonathan, co-founder on Epistemic Me. On this podcast, we bring on researchers, founders, entrepreneurs, scientists, builders of the future, people doing big things with big stories to tell. Today, we have a build in public update for Epistemic Me. Jonathan and I just spent the last like 5 or 6 days or something last week just going to conferences like all day. Went to Sidebar conference, which is it's called the Sidebar Community for Product and Technology Leaders in Tech. In general, there's some entrepreneurs there as well, and then the Vitalist Bay Longevity Tech um, conference that was over the weekend in Berkeley. So Jonathan had a VIP pass to the Longevity Bay one, so he was able to get into a speaker's dinner, which is pretty cool. And I'd love to get a debrief from him for you on the pod. And we want to cover everything we learned. Really, these conferences are like cutting edge. You're on the latest and greatest with the best people in these spaces. And in these conferences, we had a chance to test out a few things. One was showing AI Brian from Don't Die, our first use case, to people and seeing what they think. Two is testing out our marketing positioning. So I'll get into that in a sec, but how do we position Epistemic Me? What is it? What does it do? Why is it valuable? Um, and then also building more partners and building more of a community of contributors. So those were a few of the goals for the conference. And I guess another one was really like, hey, are we on the right track? Does our market positioning resonate with people? Do people get it? So that we could just maximize our learning rate to keep iterating towards our own market hypotheses. So I think where we'll start is like maybe we could just go back and forth on initial impressions of Sidebar first. We'll talk about Sidebar for like 10 minutes, and then we'll spend the majority of the time talking about the Vitalist because that's more in tune with Epistemic Me and our use cases. So first off, Sidebar was held in San Carlos, and it was their first ever conference. I went to a dinner the first night, Wednesday night, and I hosted like a musical chairs sort of thing to facilitate connection with people. That was fun. The event organizers asked me to do it. So I had a good time. Met a bunch of people. Tested out the marketing positioning of. So this community is really lots of product and technology leaders. So I thought, okay, well, they're probably a mixed panel of Postcog all the time, right? Or Amplitude. They're probably used to the term cohort. So we came up with this positioning. I should say our GPT intern came up with this positioning, and then we're just co-opting it. Thank you, GPT intern. Um, the tagline is most tools group cohorts by click. Our tool groups cohorts by belief to help your product do its job better. So when we explained it that way at Sidebar, I turned a lot of heads. product leaders just like really interested in that. They're like, wait, oh, that's so interesting. But they also understand time to value. Like if you could really get into a user's head, like you could personalize their value, right? And so the ones that I talked to understood beliefs, and so cohorts by clicks, cohorts by beliefs, like old world, new world, that that really latched for them. And then the sidebar conference the next day, all day Thursday, was at the Aviation Museum in San Carlos. So it was kind of a cute, small setting and lots of aviation history. So that was fun. There was a really great keynote that I recall them talking about like human evolution and stuff and thinking. That was awesome. I went to a session on AI for PMs. That was okay. A couple sessions on influence. Those were all right too. Most of the value that I got from that conference was like talking to other product technology leaders. I met a few coaches who are interested in our concept, one of whom just wrote a book, pretty well connected in neuroscience. Her name is Caroline. And so I got her to agree to an interview on the pod and met a bunch of other people too that I have endless amounts of follow-ups to get through. Overall, I give it like, oh, 7.5 out of 10. Like, oh, I guess I should mention another thing. I won an award. That was pretty cool. So, yeah, I didn't expect that at all. Mainly because I've been giving them such, like, visceral feedback on the product that I feel like maybe you won't be my friend anymore. I've been giving them pretty harsh feedback on their product offering. Um So anyway, when the awards came up, I think I got called up for the first one. It was the Sidebar Go Givers Award, and I always pride myself on leaving every relationship or community a better place. I found it. I'm not perfect, so but I try to hit that. And yeah, won that award. That was fun, and a lot of people gave me congrats after. Um, yeah, overall, I think I'd give it 7.5 out of 10. It was a pleasant experience. Met a lot of good people, got good learnings that our marketing positioning with that new tagline by the intern is a pretty good one. Jonathan, what did you think of Sidebar?
Yeah. So it was their first conference, right? And I joined the organization like 2.5 years ago, and participated in their sidebar circles, which is kind of like a advisory forum. And started as like founders and execs, advisory forum for founders and execs. And over the years, the organization has pivoted to career growth network, and it's focused more on community. And now there's even like these two different levels you can join at. You can either be in a circle and the community, or you can be just in the community, which is pretty interesting. Um, and I had been in an entrepreneur organization, at EO, in previous life, and enjoyed the format they have there. And Sidebar is distinct from that in that it has a paid facilitated forum advisor that really kind of helps the meeting flow, and it helps you clarify your language and your goals, and helps you to get in environments where you can get feedback from people. So I think about when I think of Sidebar, I think about a place I go every 2 weeks to like clarify my what I'm my active narrative in my head, what my goals are, to be able to articulate these and get feedback from smart people. Um, and I, p- I particularly have loved Sidebar for the specific people I've met in my circle, because just like really some really incredible thinkers and professionals that have helped me think and advance, that could kind of co-evolve together. And I was expecting to meet sort of a high caliber of people at the event. And I'd say there is less entrepreneurship in the organization than there was before. So this was a little bit of like me feeling like I was on the outside looking in, like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur in this place where like people are product managers and they want to advance their career. And then there was even people being invited to the conference who weren't in Sidebar at all, who were just like, like invited to come to the conference as a product manager to like check out Sidebar, um, which is also cool. So, one note about your award, I think, is like this is an example of like if you show up in a formative community, that you can shape the values. And I actually think that like the values they shaped of like helping other people, for instance, that like there was like a literal value exercise that Ha had run, and I think that Robert's activity engagement actually helped shape what they felt like other way other people should engage. And you had this period where you were like dedicated to helping out like the first 50 people, like, I'm going to meet 50 people, I'm going to help them along, and be dedicated to that. And I think that like actually gave Ha a vision for what other people could do. So like, kudos. And I thought that was like really cool. And I wasn't surprised at all that they gave you an award for inspiring that. Um, yeah. And then I can share some of the stuff at the conference that was memorable to me. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that'd be great.
Cool. Yeah, I think one thing you didn't mention was that like this was at first a demo platform for Lexi, the CEO, to like give a demo of this new interview tool that they built. So this is an AI conversational interface. So just like we were building tools for, they had an interface where you would be a senior leader looking for a job, and they would coach you. And so it like brought you through a simulated interview session, and then it would compare your answers against a rubric of metrics they've been collecting from different hiring professionals. And remember, this is specifically for like senior leaders that are looking for jobs. So it's kind of hard to articulate your narrative sometimes for these positions. And the rubric would give you feedback. And so like as Lexi was talking, giving his story, um, he got like a 60%, and he got like feedback that he needs to be more specific about the outcomes he created at the places he went. And I thought that tool was really good just to help you sharpen your personal like narrative as you go into like looking for a senior position at a company. um and I was kind of impressed by the demo and that the Sidebar team put together, so that was cool. And then I'll also talk about Phil Terry's presentation because, I think uh, Phil Terry, what's the name of his book that he wrote? It's,
Oh, hang on, I'll get it.
yeah,
Hang on, just don't mistake it. Never Search
Never Search
Alone.
for Ellen,
That's the
right?
one.
Yeah, so I'd had this book recommended, or heard it recommended, a number of times. People have gotten a lot of value out of it, and he creates these kind of like support groups where again you are working with a group of like maybe 8 peers to sharpen your message, to like process your leads and for jobs and to find a job. And like his overarching thesis is that in a time of technology disruption, there's going to be people who like need to reskill or relocate, and like you need a support foundation for that. And I really thought that's brilliant. And he's thinking at a level that I wish like U.S. policymakers were thinking at. Um, but I didn't expect this, but he brought up cumulative cultural evolution, and he was talking about the nature of like how ideas evolve. Cumulative cultural evolution is from Joseph Henrich's work. He has written papers about it. He's written books about this, and the secrets of our success and the weirdest people in the world. Um, and the way that Phil was talking about it was in regards to like how innovation happens. And he talked about how like it's always the case that just like a group of people randomly, trying to solve a problem and through trial and error, trying to make progress over and over again. It's the persistence, it's the quantity of sort of hypotheses will always beat out the lone genius. Um, and there you can there's different experiments you can like bound to create that result. But I think what he's trying to show is just that what we need to create environments where people are working together collaboratively, building on top of one another's ideas, trying to replicate the kind of success that has gotten humanity to the point where we're at today, and just don't stifle it. And I had a chance to talk to him after the presentation, and one of the themes that came up what was that politics stifles innovation. It stifles cumulative cultural evolution specifically. And so, you can kind of imagine going from like a tribal environment where knowledge is shared and into an organizational structure that has as politics and innovation being stifled. And so how do you sort of like grow group size while still maintaining knowledge sharing and innovation? And that's been one of the like key theses I've thought about a lot in terms of my company Team Machine. Like it's really it is meant to build 0 to 1 organizations that could sort of like scale without hitting the iron wall of oligarchy, and keep individual autonomy and creativity and ideas building on top of one another. So um, anyway, I enjoyed his presentation. I thought it was like perfect for the audience, and he had like a really sort of bright message and thoughtful. And he's writing a book, and he has mathematical models, and I definitely have to follow up with him. He's probably my number one follow up.
Yeah, totally, totally. And that was a talk that started the day. So that was like I think that was the best talk that I
Yeah, it was
remember.
the best one.
Would you? Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome that Phil will follow up with you on the mathematical models from their book. That's gonna be sick. Keep us abreast of that, and then we'll also keep the pod audience abreast of that too. I suppose another thing I should mention is Ethan Evans was at the conference. He was another him and then Shreyas Doshi were two other like kind of influential people in the tech scene. Um, I got to talk to Ethan a bunch, so that was cool, and hopefully he wants to be on the pod at some point. Um, but yeah, I got to talk to him a lot and saw a presentation by him, which had to do with his time coming up at Amazon and his interactions with Jeff Bezos. Key takeaway that I got from that was just like, just stay communicative, even if you're fucking up. Be communicative about your fuck up. Talk about how you'll keep, take ownership of your fuck up, how you'll improve things. Just basically growth mindset applied to work. And I really liked that. That was cool. I liked those stories that came up.
Yeah, you
So
know,
overall, oh yeah, go ahead, Jonathan.
it provoked a thought in a conversation I've been having, about politics, because Ethan was talking about how these two periods in his career, working at Amazon at a high level, um, the failure itself and his response to the failure was what he felt got him promoted, right? Um,
Yeah,
and it's in the context of like maybe a specific personality in the organization. Um, and it being Jeff Bezos, and Bezos specifically was the one who rewarded his behaviors, right? Um,
yeah,
but the conversation I've been having recently is just the career paths of Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and how there's been multiple points in their careers where they've had like failures or setbacks, and their like superhero ability seems to be like turning those into like a step function in results, right? I think we saw it with Trump's like amazing political comeback, here in the last several years. Elon's been on the ropes like a number of different times with his businesses, and it's just kind of a reminder that like, it's not like it really defines your path, how you're going to respond to setbacks and to failure, whether you're going to like let it set you back, or whether you're going to turn that into something way bigger. And I think some of the people that kind of float to the top of at least the current U.S. incentive structure, they can always they're like Teflon. They can always just find a way, a stakeholder, populist movement, something to like resurrect them from the dead and keep going. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think the ability to pick yourself up, I think Ethan was talking about, like, he basically said that's the best
Yeah.
skill you can have. That's what he basically said is recovery optimization. I think that's what he called it. Ethan, if you're listening to this and I got it wrong, I'm sorry, man. But not, maybe not in those words, but in that meaning is like, how, if you fall, if you fail, if you have a setback, how do you actually recover? What do you choose to do in those moments? Like, that can be very defining, as Jonathan said. I believe that's very true in life, as well. So, like, one thing that came up as you were saying that is just even the word failure. It's like, is it real? Like, it really is just dependent on your mentality, right? A setback or a failure point could just be like one step in the journey, right? And progress is nonlinear, so you're just going to be like doing this the whole time in life in every domain, I think. So I think that's like a choice to see it. Like, I remember watching videos of Michael Jordan and he said he loves failure. I was like, "What?" And it's like it's because it gave him opportunity for
Yep.
improvement. That's probably like a goaded level perspective where you like where you're like so good, you typically don't brush up against it. And then when it's there, you're like, "Oh yeah, like I like that. I want to keep growing." So, yeah, good points made, Jonathan. Okay, so that was Sidebar Summit. Let's go over the Vitalist Bay conference. Do you want to give a quick overview of what this is about and what the organization is about, Jonathan? Because I think you're closer to them than I am.
Yeah, so let's see. Vitalist Bay is an 8-week pop-up in Berkeley, California. They're renting the facility from the Light Cone Institute, which was formerly Less Wrong, um, which like they both organizations have sort of an interest in extreme longevity, and that's if you go to vitalism.org, I think it's .org, you can see you know their core tenets, which is really that death is bad, that we all want to live another day, that like basically we want to work towards the option of immortality, and and the minute I met the founder Adam at a longevity dinner in San Francisco, the minute you told me about it, I was like, yeah, I'm in, man. It's like this is this is the life I've been living. This is how I've been thinking. I've been looking for other people's ideology, and so he created this pop-up called Vitalist Bay, and he attracted some of the like smartest minds in the longevity space. So you can think of people coming in from biotech, a lot of biotech entrepreneurs, a lot of biotech scientists, a lot of health entrepreneurs. Health enthusiasts and just people that really want to see longevity progress. And one of the big questions was whether Brian Johnson was going to join the Vitalist, and he did. So the biggest conference was this weekend. It was the fourth conference they threw. Is this weekend they called it the Summit, and it was kicked off by Brian Johnson on Friday morning. Um, and yeah, and it was just really cool to see all the energy and conversations. I have a lot to say about it. So, but that's a little bit of background.
One quick thing before we get into the weeds, there was a hilarious moment. So now I'm like, me and Jonathan are working with Brian's team on Don't Die, Brian AI. And there was a hilarious moment where I came in midway through the Brian talk because Google Maps failed me and I took a lift out into the hills of Berkeley. And then I was like, wait, where the fuck am I? I'm in the residential neighborhood in the suburbs. Like, where am I? Like, why? I thought this was a conference. I text Jonathan, he gives me the right address, which is like 15-minute walk from my house. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. And so I get to the conference late because I trusted the Google overlords, lifted to the wrong place, could have just walked there if I had the right address. And I walked in midway through Brian's talk and I was just standing and I texted Jonathan. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm here. And Jonathan's like, hey, I'm on the bleachers. I see Jonathan. We locked eyes. We are like, oh, yeah, got you. Cool. I'll catch up with you later. And he texts me and he's like, hey, Kate from Blueprint is sitting next to me. Kate is Brian's co-founder on Blueprint and Don't Die. And so I was like, oh, I've been interacting with her in Slack. Like we've been collaborating online. I should say hi. And so during the middle of a talk, I had grabbed a coffee or something. I came by and sat myself right next to Jonathan and who I thought was Kate from Blueprint. And I introduced myself. I was like, hey, Kate, it's Robert. I'm from the, Blueprint Slack. Like we've been interacting, we've been working together. And then she like doesn't say anything for a sec, had a confused look. And I was like, I mean, like, whatever. So I sit down and then 10 seconds later, she turns over and she's like, oh, wait, do you think I'm Brian's Kate? And I was like, no, fuck me, you're not.
She
It was so hilarious. She looked
She
exactly
looked a
like her.
lot
Like
like her, and her name was Kate.
a
They're
lot like
both of the
her.
names were
And
Kate.
her name was
I
Kate.
mean, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was just this uncanny pattern matching.
She's at longevity, looks like her. Her name's Kate.
And
It's just, it totally could have been it. Yeah.
and I'd just seen Kate on Brian's most recent podcast. Like they're starting a new podcast format, and so I was
That's
very
right.
familiar with what
Yeah.
her face looked like, and I was like, "That's definitely her."
Yeah.
And her name's Kate. It can't be
Yeah.
anybody else. Like and
Well, Jonathan was confident, and then when I saw her, I was confident. So it wasn't just like Jonathan screwed me over. It was like I looked as well, and I was like, yes, I agree, that is Kate.
yeah. And we met
So
Kate later, who's a Berkeley, engineering master's student, and she's really cool,
yeah,
but very different person than.
yeah, 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 yeah. Very, very different. Yeah. So anyway, funny blooper aside, Jonathan, I feel like you're bursting with energy on like, you know, what happened at the conference and stuff. So you want to debrief it and just give me your top of mind impressions?
Oh man, I mean, first of all, it was like you're just tripping over really smart people. Like it was just this feeling of constant FOMO that there was just like somebody right next to you that you could have this amazing conversation with, share ideas, generate activity, and I still feel that. So I've got a long follow up list. Um, let me start with kind of start with two of the themes that I think came out of the conference to
Yeah,
me because um,
yeah,
I think two of the most maybe forward-looking conversations. One was Brian Johnson's where he did the dinner conversation. He asked the three questions and he talks about like how we have no idea what's going to be happening in the future because of AI. So just hang on, stay alive. And I thought it was interesting in the after with Adam Grease that he said he wouldn't be interested in longevity if not for AI. That was the first time I've heard him say that. Um, that and Tim Urban's sort of projection, where Tim is working on a new book where he's writing the history of mankind since the Big Bang and to the present. And he kind of gave a framework where he's like, if you think of uh, each of the chapters of civilization is, like we're in like the 909, as they say, there's like 1,000 chapters overall. We're 999th one, and like things are changing so much faster now. Like we had like a whole block of chapters where we were just like, we would be hominids, right? And like live the same life as our ancestors. Now everything changes even within a generation. And now there's AI. And so the common theme between Tim Urban and Brian Johnson was like that things are moving so fast, there's just no tools that we have to predict the future. And it's going to be a wild ride. Really crazy. They're both sort of on the optimist scale, but also I think both of them intimated that like, hey, things could go really wrong in the future. There's no guarantee that they won't. And my theme coming out of that was that these are two people that have access to the smartest people in the world, the most like uh, thought forward AI scientists, the billionaires of the world. Like these guys are talking to them constantly, and there's this sort of like um, I guess thought protocol that if you're really smart, you just admit that you have no idea what's going to happen. And I think there's something fair about that. But I also think that there are ways we can look at how technology and humanity can co-evolve where there are evolutionary pathways and possible paths and impossible paths, and that we don't know nothing about the future. That, but it's very it's ambiguous. But I think like what we really need to take this conversation next is what are the possibilities and what are the evolutionary pathways. um, and I, interestingly enough, got a chance to talk with Tim about this on the way to the speakers dinner, where we both missed like the shuttle to get there, and I hopped in an Uber with him, and we just got to chat about this for a bit. Um,
That's
yeah,
fun.
so that was one of my key themes. Is like, yes, AI plus
Well,
humanity plus longevity, but like, can we know nothing about the future? I think we can.
okay. So what did y'all, Tim, talk about in terms of trying to know something about the future, like charting the evolutionary path?
Well, yeah. If you remember at the end of Brian's conversation, he called on Patrick House, who he'd worked with at Kernel, and he was given a presentation earlier that day, and he talked about like the nature of evolution as something that is it like basically metabolism fitness drives evolution. He said something to that extent. He mentioned like how it's really expensive for mammals to have a constant body temperature, but it's such a strong evolutionary fitness function that it's
Yeah, yeah. They talked about turtles and stuff like that that had, they're operating at like 60 degrees or something like that versus humans 98 degrees. And so that's where they talked about metabolic
right.
fitness.
Yeah. And I thought like so after that first day when I saw that I was thinking that like okay, if there's one evolutionary pathway where AI augments current biological metabolism, let's just call that one pathway, one set of adaptive fitness functions that could co-evolve between AI and humanity or biology. Um, and then another evolutionary fitness pathway is that AI figures out how to metabolize its own energy, and it creates energy sources that are like way more efficient than civilization or evolution has found so far. And like that's one of the realities that we can't possibly see. Um, and I just so I asked him like, which of those do you think is going to happen first? Um, and I think he seemed to think that was maybe a good way to pose the question. Not that we came up to the answers, but you just we're kind of like, how do we think about this, right? Um, and that's the thought framework that I had maybe to follow up Brian's three questions is like, of these different ways that we find metabolic fitness functions between AI and humanity, like, and there's more possibilities, right? It's not just biology. You can have synthetic biology, you can have ecological adaptations, you can have augmentation of civilizational metabolic functions, like being able to mine, extract oil and other fossil fuels or solar energy, and like then there's a world where AI co-evolves with humanity to create robotic systems that can do that. But like if we just lay all these things out, I think there are first principled ways to say like that like augmenting the current organism level metabolic functions of humans is probably the first way that AI will impact. Um, and and I'm gonna kind of lay out these landscapes and say like which of these evolutionary pathways, how might they evolve, and what might this look like? Um, and I think that gives us more information than just saying like we can't possibly know anything about the future.
Got it. Okay. So like kind of like finger in the air. I think it's this way. Like they're going to augment us and improve our metabolism. Like that might be the one evolutionary path. Like that seems like, from what you're saying, that seems like an obvious one. Am I hearing that right? Or
Yeah, well, being at the conference, right, there were a lot of biotechnologists there that were working at the cellular level. And so there's ways that AI could augment the ways that cells harness and metabolize energy. Cells within any living being. This might be our agriculture or farm animals or whatever. Might have to do with metabolic disorders and solving health problems. Um, or there might be like some way that we can augment like the way that our whole biology works together, that we have 100 times as much energy as we ever did before because we're just able to like find all these like little nuanced efficiencies with AI and accelerate evolution. Um, and I think it's a little bit more than like hand waving. It's like that there are first principle ways to look at how evolution has happened to come up with simulations and put energy into like really simulating different potential outcomes and being deliberate about humanity about creating the kind of outcomes that are most favorable to us. It,
I want to be in whatever lab is working on this. Like that's like just like can you imagine a cool ass lab where you're like, hey, let's like play it out. What can happen? Like, and then your whole job is to do that as well as you can. Are there labs doing this? Maybe the audience could tell us if you know of a lab trying to simulate the future of humanity, co-evolving with AI evolutionary paths. Let us know. I'd love to look into any work there. I'm actually going to do a
Yeah,
search
there
after
are.
this
The
about
Institute
that.
for the Future comes to mind. Jane McGonigal's work at Stanford. She did a TED talk about it. Jenny Liang from my Sidebar group has done this kind of work too. Like it's just, you know,
Oh yeah, the theories of change and three horizons book,
yeah,
right? But like specifically this, which is like, let's think about how humans evolve. Like that's like very niche. Not just like hey future stuff, right? Like specifically this.
how does technology meet humanity, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
there's a lot of that. I think a lot of the AI safety work falls in that category. Um, I've been listening to 80,000
yeah.
hours. They're really like kind of drilling in to AGI specifically and how it evolves. They had um,
Mm,
Will McCaskill on recently, who works at Oxford, and they have a whole like philosophical department. Um, and I would just
mhm.
say, like, between all the amazing thinkers working in this space, what is missing are strong computational evolutionary frameworks for, making sense of past data and then extrapolating it into future data. And I think you have to look at something as extreme as like the shift into the first from non-life to life. Like, how did that happen? What's the evolutionary narrative, the data that we have? What's the story we can tell today? The shift from cellular life into multicellularity, like that's what we're witnessing right now. It's like that profound of a shift where like we need an evolutionary
Yeah.
narrative that can kind of like speak to um how humanity and AI evolve, because I think like AI could be as important as like the RNA substrate that Patrick House was talking about, like where he was saying, uh, we think we individually want to live together. Like RNAi substrates have already like figured out this longevity escape velocity. Like like DNA is just doing just fine. And I think now we have something that like
Yeah.
that grew out of our language to find a substrate in silicon, which is the AI and LLM version, which could grow into like the new form of DNA that like propagates life going forward. Um, that's the moment that we're in now. So what does that look like?
What does that look like? Like, if we're just putting on is it observation context is everywhere in every software system in the world? Like, is that what that
Right? Yeah. Well,
is? That's what we want to happen.
yeah, I think, and this, like you pull in some components of other things we saw at the conference, like how does like the individual human experience, like the individual phenotype, like where I can use synthetic biology and AI to create my own, to change my own like sort of morphogenesis through my embryonic cycle. Like, what if I can start controlling my cells and like growing new sensory organs and evolving and adapting in like new ways? What if I can include other humans into my sense making loop, and collectively we're like able
Yeah.
to like sense make and act in coordination at levels that like whereas before we were single cells, now we're like multicellular organisms.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean, you imagine all these things happening at once. I see like I see AI plus synthetic or sort of evolved humans coming together as like these collective instruments of sense making that are going to have a superior
Yeah.
evolutionary advantage. You know, if it doesn't, it's not too weird and it's not too fast. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I think the key, like,
I
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
no, go ahead, dude. Go ahead. Keep going.
Well, yeah. And then this is, you know, we have a lot to talk about, like with our talk with Andrew, who we met in the Don't Die community. But like one of
Oh,
the things,
that could be a whole pod in
yeah,
itself, honestly.
one of the things we touched
Yeah,
on, I
we'll
think
see how
after
much
you
time.
left, was actually like the forcing functions of this coevolution are going to come from, um, you know, the the capitalistic forces captured by large corporations and the concentration of resources there, and the
Mhm.
military co-evolution. So nation states like China and US, you know, co-evolving AI technology. I think those are where like the adaptation hypotheses are going to be generated from. And then like, you know, where do they land? Like, you know, so in other words, if you get some sort of like hybrid man machine AI tool that can win wars definitively, that's going to exist, right? And there's going to be no stopping it, and it's just going to be a required function. You know, and like let's say that's a tool that's required to stop nuclear weapons. Um, that we're going to build it, and that whatever weirdness that is, whatever sci-fi reality you can imagine, that like humans plus synthetic biology plus AI in coordinated group decision making abilities, like the multicellular equivalent of like our human organizations coming to life and being able to like replicate and reproduce and solve problems is you know like you know it might be on the battlefield,
Around the
it
corner.
might be reaping in
Yeah.
corporate profits, it maybe some post-capitalistic sort of like way of being that finds fitness functions that we can't imagine quite yet, but um
Yeah.
there are definitely some evolutionary trajectories here that I think we can both exclude, we can order, we can sort, and we can imagine like what possibly could come first.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna ask on this note, do you have a term you subscribe to for what's beyond Homo sapien?
Oh, really?
Like, have you adopted? Yeah, have you adopted any terms? Like, I know there's terms floating out there for what's next.
I've I've used the term cultural being, meaning like it has
Cultural
the
being.
like a actual language as a cultural substate and a evolved homeostatic you know like function that is within a common sensory loop, and it has its own like sort of OODA loop. Um, I've used the word cultural being, but I think there's probably going to be better words that you know as it shapes up.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think that's such an interesting question. What comes next past Homo sapien? You know, because we've seen what's come this far. Slash, we're still discovering, honestly. Like, not everything, not broad strokes, but there's still archaeology being done. We're still discovering parts of our own history. Um, but that is interesting to think about what comes next. I think I still take a viewpoint of like, I don't fucking know, man.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know, but I'm happy to speculate. Like, I love speculating. So that's kind of where I've settled in my position. It's just like, yeah, I'll just speculate happily, but like I don't think I'll subscribe heavily into any of these any speculations.
Yeah, I think
Um,
where I think we need speculation is to create a positive reality of the future. You know, like
oh,
Black
yeah,
Mirror uses
yeah.
sci-fi to warn against possible realities. We really need leaders who are going to like paint a picture of a positive future that people can believe in. And that's where I think like it's not enough to say like we don't know. It's just like we need human leadership at this time to manifest the next generation. Like
That's a good
yeah.
point. That's a good point. Is there anybody doing that well
No, man. Like, I
today?
think my standards for human leaders are pretty low right now. You know,
Okay.
Like,
Yeah. Fair.
read the
Fair.
news. uh,
Oh man, that's funny. Um, yeah, I agree with that. And I've always seen sci-fi as a tool for almost backcasting, right? Where it's like, let's paint a picture of the future. Might be dystopian. Thought of autonomous cars through sci-fi before it was ever even on the radar to be a real thing, you know? So futurism is definitely something we need investment in. I think that makes a lot of sense. Maybe as the EM community grows bigger, we could start like channeling the community's brain power towards these types of questions. Like it would be cool one day where we have enough of an audience where we could just pose rando questions like that. Like, what do you think is a good word for the future of Homo? Like, what's past Homo sapien? We're like, hey, audience, like, what do you think the future looks like? Like, I think that'll be so cool. If you're in the audience now and hear that, this question will probably still be relevant. So please answer still, even if this is 20 years later, please still answer. Um, okay, so just moving along here. Could you talk a bit more about the speakers dinner you went to? So Jonathan paid for like a VIP class ticket. I went to the conference a little bit late just because I've been going to a lot. So I had it as a game time decision. Ultimately, I went, but I didn't feel like it was worth it to buy the all inclusive pass of like this VIP tier. It was like a few $1,000s or something by the time that I was buying, so I didn't want to do it. Jonathan, could you give the audience the lowdown of what happened at the speaker dinner?
Yeah, let's see. So we were going from Berkeley to Alchemy Springs, which is this sauna club in San Francisco. It's a really cool place. It's like the third time I've been there, and it's a beautifully designed, like sort of Finnish looking style sauna club. And they have one of the biggest indoor saunas in there, which just like really nice, kind of like multi-tiered indoor sauna. It's hot, and then they have cold plunges outside, and then they host like with food, sort of on the outside you can get appetizers and stuff. And so yeah, and I just like the Vitalism group and Adam do a great job of organizing this. And so you walk in and then you're met with the speakers from the day. So there were speakers from all 3 days that were at the conference, and not everybody was there. Like Brian Johnson wasn't there, Matt Oberlin wasn't there, but like most of the speakers there. And I'll just speak to my experience because I think like it was sort of unworldly first getting to meet Tim Urban, who I'm a big fan of his blog, and like his article on Neuralink that he produced was like very formative in terms of like the ways that you tell narratives about how things change over time. I just thought he did a brilliant job of that. He's done a lot of work on like how the humanities have evolved over time. I've just read so many of his different pieces of work. Um, and sitting next to him in the car and talking to him, this is a guy that's just like so adept at synthesizing what the smartest scientists and the smartest thinkers are saying and bringing it into and distilling narrative. And he walks that walk too. Like he can just talk in these terms. And so we were able to like navigate through like different scientists that I was interested in. And I think the topic of like I was just like okay, cool, we're here, let's talk about how AI and humanity are going to co-evolve, like what are the different thought frameworks that we have here. We got into talking about assembly theory. Um, and he's like, oh yeah, I know Lee and I know Lee Cronin and Sarah Walker, who invented assembly theory. Um, but I had just seen Sarah Walker talk at the Long Now Foundation and talk about like how um, the notion of assembly theory gives a definition of time, as in like it's actually a definition of physics that has a unique definition of time. And when Tim was bringing up the point of that, like early um, biotic life, like cellular life, had like the number of generations that it lives is really how you have to look at like at how it changed over time. I was like so resonant with that because like that's just your key tool. If you're going to look at how things change, that there's a change in between each generation. The number of generations tells you the story of like what the adaptation space and mutation space kind of looks like. And then I was talking about both how to use assembly theory and then how to use Carl Frischen's free energy principle to kind of like contextualize this kind of like cellular evolution. And how many people can you have a conversation like with that with? And so um, this is wild. And so his latest book again, it tells us the story of humanity starting with the Big Bang, starting with just the beginning of the universe, and it like puts together a narrative. And to me, that's just like so philosophically ambitious that like a lot of people that work in university and academia don't get the opportunity to do that kind of stuff. And I'm just like really looking forward to his book coming out. So anyway, that was the way there to the speaker's dinner. So it's like the 30-minute ride. I walk in, and then I stumble upon Patrick House, who I mentioned earlier. And Patrick has written. He works at the Stanford Study for Consciousness, and he had made a presentation that I had missed because it's early, and I just have trouble getting up that early. But I watched it later on YouTube because his counterpoint said uh, that he had recorded it and put it on YouTube. I was like, great. Um, and then again, I told them what we were working on with Epistemic Me, and I told them, and I mean that we're building belief systems in the sense of like how Carl Frischken models them in the free energy principle. And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's great. If you started reading my book, I have a chapter in there called Secondhand Markov Blankets." And Markov blanket is the mathematical instrument that separates the external from internal world in like a cell's or any being's reality. And so it's like really nerdy term. I actually have like a literal blanket in my house. It's a Markov blanket, and it has like the little graph representation of the mathematics. It's like super nerdy. Um, and so
I fucking love
yeah.
it, dude. That's great. That's amazing. I love that piece of lore about you, Jonathan.
I saw it. I had to buy it the minute I saw it. I was like, that Markov blanket is going to be in my home. um, so and Patrick's even like even nerdier about it. Like he had created a chapter in his book called Secondhand Markov Blankets, and he meant the second hand of a clock, like seconds on a clock. So he was like, make
I was thinking like I got this Markov blanket off
that's
Goodwill
right. That's what his
once.
editor was thinking too. So
Ah,
he told me that, as far as he knew, that was the only typo in the book, and he was just like, "Oh, how could you miss this amazing pun?" And but uh, so anyway, it's a great book. It's called the 19 Ways to Look at Consciousness. It's on Spotify or Audible or anywhere your books are found, and it's a really interesting read. I'm about halfway through it right now. I'm loving some of the illustrative language he gives around how consciousness evolved. And by the way, he also mentioned to me that he was interviewed by Annika Harris in the book Lights On. He was in the chapter about like parasites and plants. Um,
well, that's right, because he did that. I was looking at his stuff. He did that one.
yeah.
That one parasite that like lives in something's brain or whatever. Yeah.
So yeah, it was such a trip. I mean, I told him like I just read this book on consciousness, and like we were talking about consciousness, and he's like, "Yeah, I was in that book," and so
That's
you know,
cool.
just clearly somebody who's really thinking about the interesting things, and we were all brought to his attention by Brian Johnson, who had worked with him at Kernel and had him come on stage and answer some questions about consciousness that were coming from the audience, which is really cool. Then right after that, I met a gentleman from Japan who was holding up his iPad, and he was showing how he had created a falsifiable experiment to replace half of his brain with like kind of like a digital memory. Um, and so his plan is like once he sort of like is terminal in his life, when if he gets cancer or something like that, or if he knows he's going to die, he's got a plan to like replace part of his brain with the circuit and then run a consciousness experiment where he's really kind of relying on the observations we have so far in the split brain experiments. Um, to see if he can actively integrate. And so part of this idea is that we can't really test consciousness objectively in the lab because all you know about consciousness is what it feels like to be you. And so, but he can test it himself. And he thought, like on his way out, he's going to do this and he's going to like share with the world. And so again, we're getting pretty deep into like theories of consciousness, and I'm like, well, how do you define consciousness? And we got into like a pretty involved discussion about it. Um, and joining us in that conversation was a pair, one from the Netherlands and one from the US, that were doing brain uploading. So, in the three of them together were part of the synthetic consciousness panel that was part of the Vitalist Bay on, I think it was on Sunday. So, like a really interesting group, and and again, like I have people understanding who Carl Frischman is, who Michael Levin is, like to get it into like very deep details of like how these people work. We talked about it's like so this
Wait, didn't somebody think you were a neuroscientist?
this
I
was the
think you mentioned that.
conversation, right? So I'm just like,
You kept up at such a good pace that people were like, "Oh, you obviously are a neuroscientist, Jonathan." Is that what
yeah, these are
happened?
like my kind of nerds, and so I'm like there. Like, are you a speaker? No, I just bought the VIP ticket. I'm in and I'm in Vitalism. Are you a neuroscientist? No.
Bro, you could totally be a speaker, man. You could. We're gonna kill it with this to the point where people will beg for you to speak there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the new goal, man.
Totally. And my path has always been like I don't want to like be the academic around these ideas. I don't want to be the writer. I want to be the guy that builds this stuff that people use and get value out of. So I want to build consciousness into a user experience. Like that's the role in life that I want to play. And that's how I present myself too. I'd just be like, yeah, I think about this stuff deeply because I'm implementing it. Um, and and quite frankly, when you have to think about like the Bayesian models that are implemented in code to implement Carl Frischman's free energy principle, like a lot of scientists, they'll like just make an implementation and throw it onto GitHub or something like that. They don't have to make sure it works in any sort of practical sense. And so yeah, I thought things through these things from this level, and I'm able to talk about like because I've thought about implementing Neil Seth's Beast Machine using Carl Frisch's free energy principle to model like a hierarchical model of consciousness. And so when I was talking with these scientists, like it was just kind of like I had very specific questions about like how they're looking at the problem and how they're building their hardware and how they're uploading brains and all this kind of stuff, um, and I think they were appreciated. And several times during the conference, like I heard stuff like um, wow, I can't believe you got that out of me. Or like, I didn't know how to explain that, or give me a few minutes to figure out how to answer your question. And so that was like the richness of the experience of Vitalist Bay for me. It was just like conversation after conversation where normally I can't even talk about like what a Markov blanket is. Now we're like three or four orders of magnitude deep into a conversation, like exploring the ideas. And it's just like kind of um very energizing and very like sort of motivating.
Yeah, sounds like you really found your tribe over the weekend, man. That's what it sounds like to me. Like just around other people crushing it in this particular area, um, longevity, and then under that, I guess underneath all of it is consciousness, not just longevity, but everything.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if people
yeah,
this smart really form tribes. It's part of the, mystery of of
that's
of
true.
like
Yeah,
movements of consciousness is that everybody's kind of off in their own little world doing their thing. But I think a group like an event like this brings people together and gives opportunities.
yeah,
And that's like so I think one of my narratives of like what brings us together is like imagining this future of
mm,
AI plus humanities and having a like creating a positive vision around it. Um, and another one that I was thinking of that we haven't started talking about yet is like, how do we create demand for the interest of like of wanting to live longer, of longevity? How do we understand the complexity that it is to be human enough to give people hope that like this is something they could actually have agency or control over? And I think those are the two vectors I came coming out of it that I thought could really like bond people together in a sustainable way.
yeah. I've been thinking about that second one actually a lot, which is like, how do we get more people caring? Like, it's an education problem. It's a demand generation problem. They're functions of each other. The more educated people are on longevity, the more they come up against their own mortality, the more demand there will be for longevity, right? Um, it's interesting. Like one thing I always ground on is like my parents. Like it's so hard to get them to care about their health. Like my brother, I was telling you about like my brother. He literally just got a re-diagnosis that hey, your whole life could just be yours now. You no longer have schizophrenia if you just exercise and diet and sleep well. And it, even when it's like here, you could just have a great fucking life and just do these things, and versus like you could have a life with schizophrenia. Like I'm seeing with my brother, it's even hard for him to break old habits, like these like very hard coded neurological neural
Mhm.
pathways of his habits, right? It's very hard to break. Um, so I actually was thinking like, I was interviewing a Don't Die user and a customer. They were telling me that they buy every Blueprint product. They were telling me all how hardcore they go into all their data. And it's just on a different level. Like if I look at my mom, my brother, and my dad, they're like, and then over here is somebody like, like that, like Brian, where it's like I get testing done every day, right? Like I'm looking at my wearables all the time. Like I have a team of scientists. Like I'm looking at every single biomarker. I'm looking at every factor that could cause these to move left or right, and I'm being a scientist about it. Um, if we look at Moore's crossing the chasm or the technology lifecycle adoption curve, right? Like really look at that. The biohacker like that is like the innovator right now. Like not even a 1.5% is I think that's the real number of the innovator slice of the pie. If we have 8 billion people in the world right now, 1.5%, there's no way we have 1.5% of 8 billion people that are at that level. So I think what that tells me from a product perspective or just like technology lifecycle adoption permeating our cultural consciousness is just like we're so fucking early. And then I guess another thought is like I was talking to somebody about this in the conference. Maybe you were there in the conversation, but just like how Brian parses it through, it's like people are going to care for different reasons. The base level is just like, hey, I want to look hot. I want to feel better about myself. I want to be confident. I maybe don't even care about the dying stuff. I just care about the social status games, right? And then there are different people that are like, I just had a blood test. I have a life scare. Oh shit, I got to get my act in order. Okay. And then there are people that have just been playing sports their whole life, and maybe they're more curious now on like, okay, I don't really need to be healthy for athletics anymore, but I just want to be healthy just to live long and see what life is like, right? Maybe see if I can be immortal. That's another class of people too. Um, so I think what I'm saying is the education problem and the demand problem I see as functions of each other. And right now, to create more demand, aka educate more of the populace, I like what Brian's doing. Like he's bringing like influencers like Kim Kardashian into the conversation, who have access, influence, and power over, the millions, billions of people on Earth. I think that is a way to go about it. Where I imagine, in a future where everybody cares about longevity, I think there's like a few key influencers per city in the world living that lifestyle of trying not to die, trying to maximize their life, and then they're very loud about it on social media. They get interviewed on like mainstream media. Um, it's all over the place. And then people could see themselves in it too, especially if it's somebody local or if it looks like them. So yeah, a few thoughts there, but I think it's like you got to get people into the funnel of like, okay, I should look hot or I should feel good about myself. Or like go down the funnel to be like, okay, I should probably try to live a better life longer. And then it's like even further down is like, okay, how do I get immortality? um, so yeah, I think it's gonna be a while. I don't know. Based on just those numbers, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we just live in such an interesting time that I think that
Yeah.
people get this idea of what it means to be human, from uh, their family, from their education, from their religion. There's a lot of institutions that it's sort of you're born into that give you an idea of why you're alive and what your purpose on life here is. And one of the things, watching Patrick's talk at the conference, Patrick House, he mentioned that like um, the thing about the longevity conference is that is meaning and purpose, meaning that like a neuroscientist that can only like if they could only do neuroscience for like 5 years, it wouldn't be meaningful because they wouldn't feel like they could actually make enough impact to like extend life. But neuroscientist
Oh,
that can work for 20 years or 50 years feels like there's going to be enough evolution in the field to where like their work could make an impact, could contribute to the thing that they want to advance, which is maybe like um, to be able to have neural cognition longer or in better
yeah.
in an augmented way, right? I think everybody's got this idea of like what their identity is and what it means to be alive and what their purpose is. And where so I think about like where can we instill a value where like um kind of like like the French mantra in Western civilization of the cradle to grave, right? The country is here to take care of you from cradle to grave. But if we're educated from the beginning to know that like technology is rapidly changing and we have to have a notion of self that we're constantly working to contribute towards survival and towards the evolution of consciousness. And if that was like a model that like a 4-year-old kid got when he entered the education system, or a model that a 3 or 4-year-old kid got through some kind of religion or indoctrination, that like this is the world you were born into, and your life is incredibly important. And everybody's life around you is going to be a result of like how hard we work together to co-evolve technology and to create the reality that we want. And by the way, we might not all be here in 50 years. Um, like if we can hold on to beliefs like that, I think that like pockets can form that can be like very sort of viral and like really
Yeah.
pull people into it. So it comes down to like this
Yeah.
notion of identity, this notion of purpose, this notion of meaning.
I always go back to I think if we just had a cool personality quiz, like this could go viral. Like I'm so much money is made in the personality quiz space, and like a lot of it is just people want to mirror themselves. Like people take Harry Potter quizzes to figure out what Hogwarts house they're in, like they want to know themselves. Like there's a deep human desire to figure yourself out. Or at least like what might drive that is trying to find your purpose, and in that maybe find other identities, like who you are. Like I don't think there's one identity. I think everybody's got many. Um, like for example, I would identify as a rock climber and a guy and a Vietnamese person and a product leader and a founder. Right? There's all these things, identities coming together at once to make me me. Um, that's what I mean by my multiple identities.
The personality quiz. Um, so you remember that that test that prompt I sent you for ChatGPT? Now that it has memory, it can like
Yeah,
accurately determine your Myers-Briggs type. And so
yeah, yeah.
like ChatGPT is so deeply used. I think we could make a belief mirror personality quiz on top of it, just like you know, uh,
Like a GPT, Epistemic Me GPT that just, dude, actually, wait, that's a great
yeah.
idea to just try to get any users to come in. That's a great idea.
I mean,
That that'd be
so many
pretty
people have
easy to do as
their
well.
history there already, and so I think it's like, yeah, here's what we can tell about you. Here's the belief system we can construct. Talk about this kind of stuff more if you want to like update the belief system.
Oh,
Yeah,
dude, I have an idea. When we release the self-model bootstrapper on our website, and once we get to the point where we allow somebody to just create their own digital twin, we were talking about that with the coaches. Give them a GPT, an Epistemic Me intern GPT that can extract as much meaningful data from ChatGPT about them as possible, and take that to bootstrap their
there you
self-model.
go.
That'd
Yeah,
be, yeah, that's a great idea. Wait, that's awesome.
yeah.
I'm gonna write this down.
I've been researching the
That's
implementation of
great.
that, by the way. It's like it's gonna be a
When you're ready,
must-have.
dude. I think that for sure is like just like the mirror concept. Like people want to see themselves in it. If they see themselves in it, they're more likely to engage in it. You
Yeah,
know, like you remember the Immortal Dragons VC fund at the Vitalist
yeah, with
conference?
the 3D digital
That
twin. Yeah,
TV? Dude, wasn't that so
yeah.
cool? I'm like, oh man, this is so cool. This is exactly I would love this. Like I would love this for myself. um Powered by Epistemic Me, of course, but like yeah, like some visual of it just for the audience to know. We saw this VC fund, they're investing in experimental projects in tech, and they had one app where you could uh, create an avatar of yourself, like take pictures of yourself. It creates a literally 3D model of you and your exoskeleton, your physiological like structure and your musculature and stuff. And what they show you is like, hey, if you keep doing the habits you're doing, this will be you in 20 years. And it was like a fat version of you or like a healthy version of you, depending on what your biomarkers were looking like and what your habits look like. That kind of paints a very visceral reaction to the human that is like, wait, that could be me. I don't want to be that. Like, or, oh, that could be me. I keep doing that. I'll look like this. Heck yeah. So I think that mirror concept is very powerful. So whenever we're ready to test that, I think that would honestly be an amazing demo. Like that, like we were just talking about the Steve Jobs like demo, like give me something to demo. Dude, you had that for me to demo at like one of these developer tooling events. Be like, and then we end it with the tagline of something like most tools group cohorts by clicks, we group cohorts by beliefs. Boom, done, mic drop. People are signing up on OnlyFans, you know?
I love it, man. Script it out. Let's bring it to life.
I think, yeah, let's bring that to life. I'll
Mm.
yeah, for sure. That's oh yeah. Okay, let me just add this action to my list of things to do just so I don't forget. This is a really good one. Um okay, so this one is gonna be self-model bootstrapper demo plus GPT intern to extract self-model data. Cool. Okay. I'm looking at the time, and I have uh, an obligation I got to get to, so I don't think we can get through the rest of today. What I think we'll do is end it there and just end on a teaser of a great conversation we had um, uh, with a gentleman named Andrew at the conference, where we were really getting into. This was such a cool conversation, Jonathan. I was like about to leave because I was conferenced out. I was pretty dead, and me and Jonathan were just debriefing and just talking about who we'd follow up with or whatever. And then this guy Andrew comes over, who Jonathan, you had talked to him before that, right?
Yeah, he went to the
Um,
Don't Die conference in September, and I met him on a Don't Die hike.
oh,
So yeah,
oh, okay,
he's yeah.
okay, yeah. So we met this guy Andrew. He stopped by. the conference, and we were all just sitting down on a couch, and Jonathan had his laptop out. And then Andrew comes by, and he's working with the ex-founder of Skype, I believe, who's funded him to build a unified longevity platform where he could connect into any database that has like a medical record, like Sutter Health or Kaiser or whatever. You log in with whatever login they give you, and then it could collect your medical
Not a
records
not a
and act as a
doctor.ai.
unified. That's right, not a doctor.ai. So it could collect all your medical records and then act as not a doctor for you. um, Really cool guy, very engaged, passionate, and we could have intellectual conversations. So we were talking about Frischten's free energy principle, and he was really questioning us on like, how are you defining beliefs in epistemic me? To the point where we don't. I mean, we love that kind of stuff. Like, you want to go that deep? Like, let's go. And so we were having a great conversation. And then we realized that we had a difference where um, he was calling beliefs, I think, according to this other theorem, which Jonathan and I had never heard of. Let me pull it up right now. It is the
Newman.
von Neumann Morgenstern utility theorem. Von Neumann Morgenstern utility theorem. I'll throw a link to that in the show notes. It's part of behavioral science and decision theory. I'm reading this from the Wikipedia right now. The von Neumann Morgenstern utility theorem, or VNM, demonstrates that rational choice under uncertainty involves making decisions that take the form of maximizing the expected value of some cardinal utility function, aka why do actors make the choices they do. And with Epistemic Me, we were kind of coming at it from like, hey, people have these belief systems, they drive perception and into reality. Like, this is why people do things. They get new evidence to disrupt their beliefs or further them, and then they do more things, right? So he brought this other theorem to the conversation, and Jonathan and I had never heard of it, and so we'll sneak peek it here. Y'all can look into it, and then we're just gonna do another pod where we wrap up the rest of the conference and then go into this part of that conversation. With that said, Jonathan, any last minute notes on the conference before we wrap today's pod?
Yeah, can I just make one definitional point about the conversation
Yeah,
with
please.
Andrew that I think is really relevant to what we're doing, which is that where Andrew was asking about values, right? And traditionally in philosophy, epistemology and axiology are sort of separate things from one another. And so one of the things that we were disambiguating in the conversation was this. It's like a strong premise that I have that that axiology should actually be constrained to concept of cause and effect that makes them part of epistemology. So I see axiology as like a subset of it, and that's where I use this tool called the observation context to kind of like you know both co-inform values from beliefs and beliefs from values. So we'll have to get into that deeper sometime because it's actually something I like to uh, articulate
Yeah.
better, get your feedback on, circle back with Andrew, and like there's just like sort of more like lots of growth and articulation in that direction.
Yeah. Okay, so next pod we'll debrief more on that Andrew conversation on belief systems, free energy principle, axiology, epistemology, and we'll also talk through the rest of what happened at the conference. There were a few other follow-ups to do as well. For today, though, I think that's enough for the pod. It's getting long, and I got to run. So thank you, everybody, for listening or watching the podcast. We really appreciate your listenership, viewership. If you have questions, comments, throw them into YouTube. That's where we'll check comments. Also, subscribe on Substack or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast listening done at. Next episode, Jonathan and I will go over in detail some of those items around values, beliefs, axiology, epistemology, and the rest of the Longevity Conference. And we'll continue to build in public, and we'll continue to take feedback from all of you on what you want to hear from us. So let us know. Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Jonathan. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.